Hey everybody, what's up? Ray here again, and remember when I said that this tavern in the as of yet still unnamed village might be the first one to get interior? Well, turns out I was wrong, because it's this random storage building in Linshire instead. And with that, welcome to the first showcase episode of my medieval fantasy world of Merath. If you recall, these showcase videos are going to be more of a cinematic type of update video, in contrast to the first person type of I'm just rambling around things update videos, which I will still continue to do as well. So without further ado, let's hop into it, and believe me when I say there is a lot of progress for me to show you. All of this progress is in the city of Linshire, and it's pretty much all buildings, which might not seem very interesting, but there are quite a lot of details that make it interesting. Now, from an aerial view like this, it might not seem like that much has changed to the last episode. However, in fact, the built-up area has almost doubled from last time. If you take a look down from straight above, you can see that this entire area they're marking out now is all new. This used to be just nothing, just grass plains, but it's all built up now. You can also see a stark difference if we take a look at the city from the riverside. If we take a look at this older screenshot here, you can see that there was basically like almost no riverfront here. It was like very short, but the new one is actually like 2.5 times as long. So that is quite a lot of progress here too. As a quick overview, this area contains 15 new buildings, 2 new wells, a city park, a short riverside promenade including a gazebo for people to sit and hang around, the first boats in the city, which you might recall from the village where these boats first appeared, and they are now here in the city as well. And this area also includes the very first tree that I've ever built in this entire world, so that's a notable accomplishment if I ever saw one. In this new area, I really focused on grouping the buildings together into city blocks, right? One mistake that I made in the beginning of the project was that I really just had individual buildings all surrounded by streets. That looked very boring, and I'm currently in the process of retroactively fixing that in those areas. But with this area, I from the very beginning planned it out as being an area with individual blocks of buildings, with backyards and, just people not being able to freely walk around everywhere, but having fences and other obstacles around that make the whole thing a lot more interesting. This also creates, hidden back alleys and little semi-secret passages and things like that, which really makes the whole place a lot more interesting. The buildings themselves are not really anything special from an in-world perspective, right? They are all just different shops and residential buildings, nothing unusual. But they are special from a Minecraft building perspective in the sense that these, or at least some of these, are the first buildings in the world to actually have an interior. At least partially. As mentioned before, we have this little storage building on the riverside, which is completely decked out with a full interior. But then again, it's also a very small building, so it's not really that difficult. But this was really the first building to ever get interior in this world, and I specifically picked this building because it was really just, me trying things out mostly, right? Because I needed to get a sense of how I even wanted to do interiors in the world of Merath in the first place, right? But at the end of the day, I think this turned out really nice. And remember how in the past I said that most buildings will not get interiors at all, only the important buildings will get interiors? I may have to go back on that and actually do interiors in all of the buildings eventually, because just looking at this storage building from the outside shows how much of a difference the interior makes even to the exterior look of a building. Being able to look into the windows and actually seeing something inside makes much more of a difference than I would have ever expected. So, thinking about it, I probably will add interiors to all the buildings eventually. But the eventually is very big here because interiors take a long time, and I will just add them, after the fact. I will first build all of the buildings without interiors, and I will only add the interiors when I feel like it and when I have the time, because, again, it takes a long time. So the buildings themselves will always precede the interiors by quite a bit. Another building with interior is this flower shop, although this one really only has the ground floor built out, you know, like the shop part of the building, and the upper floors, you know, like the private chambers, don't really have any interior. I actually put in walls and like sectioned things off into rooms, but I didn't furnish them. And the third and last building with interior, at least for now, is this one. This building is actually almost completely without interior so far, but it does have a little sort of private library and reading area in the topmost floor, which I think turned out really cute. Going back to the flower store real quick, I really like these flower beds that are built on the outside. You know, these would be for the flowers that the store wouldn't be buying in, but the flowers that the store owner would be planting themselves, right? And this is something that I really want to do more often as well now, is just showing the purpose of a building on the exterior, right? Like if it makes sense to have some exterior feature that already hints or shows the purpose of a building, then I definitely want to focus more on doing that. I already did this a little bit from the very beginning, especially with the clothing store, which has just the outside clothing display area, if you will, and I know I still need to kind of overhaul that because I can do that better. But in any case, I did do this a little bit from the very beginning, but I can do it more often and I definitely want to. These exterior sort of functional features, if you will, are not limited to things that show the purpose of a building either. If we take a look at the backyard here, you can see there is a bunch of carrot fields here, and these aren't really connected to any of the buildings. It's just the locals planting some local plants, because why not, right? They have the space here, so they may as well use it. But this has nothing to do with the actual profession of the people living here or the actual function of a building. This is just a regular thing that the locals do besides their main occupation, and we will see this random sort of backyard crop gardens all over the city basically. And it's not just limited to the city of Linshire, of course, we will see this basically all over the world. And in fact, the first instance of this you could already see in the little still unnamed village, where we had this carrot field here, which is basically the same thing. Now, I briefly mentioned the wells in the very beginning, and there's a reason for that. Because I have now made the decision that all the wells will have some sort of Easter egg inside of them. If we look at this well, which is actually one of the old wells, this has existed before, if we jump in here, you can see that there's the head of some dude who fell in here and died. And now if we hop into this well, which is one of the new ones, this leads us into this little lush underground cave. This is sort of inspired by the wells in Tears of the Kingdom, if you will, and props to my friend Zidax here for the idea. Now, as mentioned, every single well in the city of Linshire, well, every one of the larger wells at least, will have an Easter egg like this. However, I will not show all of these to you in these videos. I want you to discover them yourselves. Because I very much plan to make the server open for other people to join. This is still a ways into the future, but this is definitely going to happen at some point, and I just want there to be a lot of things in the world to explore and to discover. So, you know, once the server is public, you can look forward to finding all of the little weird Easter eggs all around the world. Speaking about things for people to explore, you might have noticed that I actually started building a little bit on the other side of the river. Now, I don't actually plan on actually building on the other side of the river anytime soon, but I specifically built this lot of beginning of a building because it is part of a bigger project, and that also has to do with these specifically placed boats in the middle of the river. You might have already guessed, this is a parkour course. So there will be several parkour courses hidden throughout the city. They will not be announced. Like, there are these parkour plugins, which are pretty cool, but I will actually not use them. These parkour courses will be very difficult, first of all, but also hidden. You will actually have to find them yourself. And there will be several around the city and also in the world in general, of course, right? And again, you can discover them and then explore them by finishing them, and once they're finished, there will be some sort of little reward at the end, whatever that reward might be. It's probably just some sort of joke or something. But yeah, that's another thing for you guys to explore, again, once the server is public in a few months or so. Now there's one thing that you probably already noticed and that I have completely glossed over so far, and that is this purple crystal in the middle of the city here. This is a necrotic crystal. Remember that Merath is a fantasy world, and these crystals are the first more overt fantastical element of this world. There is a bunch of lore attached to these crystals, but I will actually go over that in a separate dedicated video because, you know, it's quite a lot. But here's the basic rundown of the most important things about these crystals. They are actually found all around the world. They are not super common, but they are also not super rare either. As you can see, they create this necrotic wasteland around themselves, including these necrotic flowers here. The size of this necrotic wasteland depends on the size of the crystal. This one here is actually a very small example of a crystal, so the necrotic wasteland that it creates is actually very small. But bigger crystals can create significantly bigger necrotic wastelands around themselves. The crystals themselves are not super dangerous to people, only prolonged direct exposure to these crystals, as in touching them basically, can cause problems for people. But other than that, they are relatively harmless. The same cannot be said about the necrotic flowers that they spawn. These can cause immediate necrosis upon touch, which makes them exceedingly dangerous. This is compounded by the fact that it's virtually impossible to get rid of them. If you try to root them out, they will just immediately crop back up. Now at this point you might be asking yourself, okay, if the necrotic wasteland that these crystals spawn is so dangerous to people, why do they put up with a crystal like this in the middle of a city? Well, the thing is that these crystals are not easy to move. First of all, they are virtually indestructible. You cannot change them, destroy them, cut them up with physical means at all. The second thing is that they are big. Only about 10% of the crystal actually pierces through the surface. The remaining 90% are all underground and embedded deep into the bedrock. If we take this example here, this crystal protrudes 7 meters beyond the surface, which means we can expect this crystal to be 60 to 80 meters tall in total, with the rest of it being completely underground. These two facts make it almost impossible to move these crystals. They are basically just a fact of life, they are where they are, and you can't really do much about them. You just have to build around them, if you will. Smaller crystals can theoretically be dug out of the ground by digging out the bedrock around them, which is exactly something that I will build at some point. It's like a whole mining operation that with the whole focus of mining out one of these crystals so that it can then be moved as like one big piece. That will be super interesting to build, and I'm really looking forward to that one. So yeah, this is the first of these necrotic crystals that I built in the world, but you can expect more of these in the future. Again, they are not ultra common, but they are a regular fact of life. Now the last thing I want to talk about is this city park that I built here. Now at first I wanted to just build another building here, but this actually turned out to be quite difficult because this is a bit of an awkward spot. It's too big for one building, but too small for two buildings. But I couldn't really change that because I didn't want to change the street layout here. And that is when I came up with the idea of just putting a park here, because that doesn't exist in the city yet, or well, didn't at the time, so I just built this. This park has of course quite a lot of very well managed flowers, as well as a bunch of sitting areas for people to just hang around and chat with each other, drink with each other and things like that. So that is about it. There are about a million other details that I could talk about, but I don't want this video to become too long, so we'll wrap it up here. So with that said, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you liked the video, and join my Discord server if you want to get more frequent and earlier updates about the shit that I built. The link is of course in the description. And with that, you are now released. Again, thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Goodbye.